The first sign was the smell. Not of infidelity, not of perfume on a collar, nothing so dramatic. It was the faint, lingering scent of cheap coffee and synthetic berries clinging to him when he came home late. A smell I'd come to associate with his weekly lottery ritual. Every Friday after his shift at the warehouse, Liam would stop at the same convenience store, buy a coffee, a blueberry muffin, and a handful of scratch-off tickets. It was a small, harmless superstition, a glimmer of hope in our otherwise predictable lives. "Hey, babe," he'd say, dropping his keys into the ceramic bowl by the door. "Long day." "Rough one?" I'd ask, watching him kick off his boots. The boots were a story in themselves, heavy, scuffed, smelling of wood dust and sweat. They were the boots of a man building a life, a family. We were building something together, I thought. A future. My name is Chloe, and Liam is my husband. We've been married for 7 years, together for 10. Our story isn't one for the movies. It's quieter, built on shared glances over dinner, the comfortable silence of reading on the couch, and the rhythm of our daily routines. He's an operations manager at a lumber warehouse. I'm a graphic designer who works from home. Our world is a cozy 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, a rescue dog named Buster, and a meticulously planned vegetable garden in the backyard. The smell of coffee and berries was his. The tickets, however, were another story. He'd scratched them off on the kitchen table, the metallic scraping sound, a familiar soundtrack to our Friday nights. More often than not, they were duds. But every once in a while, a small win would spark a hopeful conversation about what we'd do with a real jackpot. "A trip to Italy," he'd say, his eyes lighting up. "And a new car for you, maybe a little convertible." We'd laugh, knowing full well the dream was a long shot, but it was our dream, and it was enough. The trouble started not with a new smell, but with an old one, pine and mint. I was a week into a design project for a local forestry company, and my workspace was a mess of color palettes and mood boards. One of their clients was a man named David, a kind, soft-spoken lumberjack with a gentle demeanor. He came by one afternoon to drop off some samples, and as he was leaving, he gave me an innocent, friendly hug. The smell of his cologne, a subtle, woodsy blend of pine and mint, lingered in the air long after he was gone. A few days later, on a Tuesday, Liam came home late. Later than usual. I was in the kitchen, making my special lasagna, the kind he loved, with 4 different kinds of cheese and homemade tomato sauce. "Hey, babe," he said, and I heard the familiar thud of his keys in the bowl. "Sorry, I'm late. We had some last-minute inventory to deal with." "It's all right," I said, not looking up from the stove. "Lasagna's almost ready." He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He kissed my neck, and the scent of him hit me. It wasn't the familiar aroma of sawdust and hard work. It was pine and mint. My stomach clenched. He smelled exactly like David. It was probably nothing. A new client, maybe? A meeting? I tried to push the thought away, to convince myself it was a coincidence, but the memory of David's gentle hug and the way he looked at me lingered. The innocent scent was suddenly a threat. "Something's wrong?" Liam asked, his voice low. "No," I lied, pulling away from him to check on the lasagna. "Just hungry." The next few weeks were a descent into suspicion. I became a detective in my own home. I checked his jacket pockets. A grocery list. A few crumpled dollars, but nothing incriminating. I glanced over his shoulder when he texted. It was always his boss, or his friend Mike, planning a fishing trip. I even, shamefully, ran a reverse image search on a picture of a woman he had liked on Instagram. She turned out to be a celebrity with millions of followers. The scent of pine and mint appeared 2 more times, always on a Tuesday, always when he came home late with a plausible story about a client meeting or a broken forklift. I considered confronting him, but the thought terrified me. I didn't want to know the truth. I wanted to cling to the illusion of our perfect life, even as it crumbled around me. Then came the Friday of the lottery tickets. It was a cold, rainy evening. Liam came home late, but this time he was beaming. His usual sour mood from a long week was gone, replaced by a jittery, excited energy. He put his keys in the bowl, kissed me on the cheek, and plopped a small paper bag on the kitchen counter. "I'm starving," he said, taking out a muffin and a coffee. He opened the bag, and a thick, sweet scent filled the air. Blueberry. He then pulled out a small stack of scratch-off tickets and spread them on the counter. "My lucky day," he said with a grin. "I just know it." He started scratching them off, his movements quick and decisive. He went through 5 tickets with no luck. The 6th one. He paused. He scratched off the last number and stared at it, his jaw slack. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. "Chloe," he whispered, his voice trembling, "I think I won." I walked over to the counter, my heart pounding. He held up the ticket, his fingers shaking. A small, 3-digit number was visible. $100,000. My hands flew to my mouth. A lump formed in my throat. "My God," I breathed. "Liam, we did it." He didn't answer. He just stared at the ticket, then at me. The excited energy was gone, replaced by a strangely guarded look. He folded the ticket and tucked it into his wallet, his movements suddenly furtive. "Don't tell anyone," he said, his voice low and serious. "Not yet. Not even your sister. Not until we've cashed it." I frowned, but I was too stunned to argue. $100,000, the car, the trip to Italy, the new countertops for our kitchen that had been bare for 3 years. It was all real now. "But," I started, my voice catching. "Don't worry," he said, a small, tight smile on his face. "This changes everything for us. I promise." But as he said the word promise, I heard a different conversation in my head. I pictured the scent of pine and mint. I remembered the late nights and the hurried texts. And for the first time, a new thought, dark and ugly, began to take root in my mind. This changes everything for us, yes. But what if us no longer meant the same thing to him? The week that followed was a strange kind of purgatory. The air between Liam and me was thick with unspoken words and the ghost of $100,000. He was excited, but in a way that felt private, almost selfish. He'd check his wallet constantly, patting his jeans pocket as if to reassure himself the ticket was still there. He told me he was going to hold on to it until a decent time to cash it came, because he was afraid that if word got out, we'd have relatives and friends asking for loans or a share of the winnings. "It's just for a little while," he said one morning as I was making my morning coffee. "We'll be smart about this. We'll decide what to do with the money, together, once everything is settled." I nodded, pretending to be busy with my laptop, but I wasn't convinced. Something felt off. He'd never been so secretive before, so guarded. We had always shared everything, our hopes, our fears, our dreams for a family vacation to a lake house. Now, a winning lottery ticket, something that should have been a source of shared joy, had become a wall between us. The suspicion that had been a quiet hum in the back of my mind grew louder. I became obsessed with the smell of pine and mint. Every night when he came home, I would subtly lean in, breathing him in, trying to catch a whiff of David's cologne. The scent was there twice that week, faint but undeniable. One Tuesday, when he came home late from a forklift repair, and again on Thursday, when he was working late to help with a last-minute shipment. He'd talk about work with an enthusiasm that felt rehearsed, forced. I began making up small lies of my own, little tests to see how he would react. "My sister wants to come over for dinner on Saturday," I said one evening, watching his face. "She wants to see the garden and try my famous lasagna." He looked at me, a flicker of panic in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a smile. "Oh, babe, that's great. But I promised Mike I'd help him with his boat that day. Maybe next weekend?" He hadn't mentioned anything about helping Mike with a boat. The lie, so smooth and easy, was a gut punch. It was then that I decided to act, not just to find out the truth, but to protect myself from whatever lie he was building. I didn't want to live in this house, in this marriage, built on a foundation of betrayal and deceit. The opportunity came on Sunday morning. Liam was in the garage, tinkering with his old Chevy truck, listening to classic rock. He always left his jeans and wallet on the dresser in our bedroom when he went down there. I walked into our bedroom, a familiar room that now felt like a foreign country, and stood by the dresser. His wallet, worn and soft from years of use, lay next to a small pile of change. I picked it up, my heart pounding so hard I was afraid he'd hear it from the garage. I opened the wallet and found the lottery ticket, carefully folded, tucked into a small pocket behind his driver's license. I took it out and looked at it again. The prize amount, the barcode, all of it. $100,000. For a fleeting second, the old me resurfaced, the one who saw a future in Italy and a new car. But then, the image of his guilty face and the scent of pine and mint flashed in my mind, and my resolve hardened. I put the ticket back in his wallet and then noticed a small, folded piece of paper in a different compartment. It was a photo, the size of a business card. I took it out, my fingers trembling. It was a picture of a woman I didn't know. She was sitting at a restaurant, laughing into a glass of red wine, and across from her was Liam. His arm was draped over the back of her chair, his head leaned in close, and his smile was one I hadn't seen in years. It was a smile from our early days, a smile full of passion and life. My breath hitched. The restaurant in the background looked dimly lit, romantic, the exact opposite of the places we frequented. I stared at the photo, the images of Liam and this woman, her laugh, his smile, burning themselves into my memory. The world went silent, the rhythm of his classic rock from the garage a distant, meaningless hum. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a harmless fling. This was a whole different life he was building, a life I wasn't a part of. The anger, the pain, the betrayal, it all hit me like a tidal wave. I put the photo back in his wallet, my movements slow and deliberate, and then I went to the kitchen. I made my special lasagna, the one he loved, with the homemade tomato sauce and 4 different kinds of cheese. The kitchen filled with a warm, comforting aroma, a lie I was determined to tell. When he came in from the garage, dirty and sweaty from his work, he would see the dinner he loved, the wife who loved him. He wouldn't know that our entire life had changed for good. Not just because of the lottery ticket, but because of a photograph that now defined our future. I spent the next few days in a daze, operating on autopilot. The apathetic part of me wanted to give in to grief, to collapse on the bed and cry until there were no tears left. But another part, a cold, calculating part that felt like a stranger in my own skin, was already at work. It was the part that had been slowly dying over the last year, starved of attention and genuine affection. Now it was hungry for something else entirely. Justice. My husband Liam was still a ghost in our own house, present but distant. He'd come home from work, eat my lasagna, and tell me about his day, never noticing that I was watching him, that every word he spoke was being dissected for clues. I, for my part, was a masterful actress. I smiled when he smiled. I nodded at his stories. I even asked innocent questions about the lottery winnings, keeping a watchful eye on his reaction. "So when are we cashing the ticket?" I asked one evening as he was taking a beer out of the fridge. "I'm thinking of some ideas for the trip to Italy." He froze for a second, then smiled that tight, guarded smile that was becoming so familiar. "Soon, babe, soon. I just want to be smart about this. We don't want to rush into anything." "Of course not," I said, reaching for a glass. "We'll plan it all together, won't we?" He didn't answer. He just kissed me on the forehead, a quick perfunctory gesture, and went into the living room to watch TV. He had already gone and booked his own one-way ticket to Italy, with her, and a lottery ticket that he believed was his and his alone. The lottery ticket was the most important detail. I needed it to enact my revenge, and I had to be careful not to arouse suspicion. I began a new ritual. Every day, when he was at work, I would go into the bedroom, open his wallet, and look at the ticket. Just look. I memorized the unique barcode, the serial number, the exact scratch pattern he had used. I even took a high-resolution photo of it with my phone, a backup in case I needed to prove anything later. The ticket was my weapon, and I was going to use it wisely. The rest of the plan began to form in my mind. a delicate and intricate web of deception. I would need to keep him from cashing the ticket. I would need to find a way to get my hands on it long enough to do what needed to be done. And I would need to do all of it without him ever knowing that I knew about his affair. My sister Clara was my confidant, my rock. She was a lawyer with a sharp wit and a no-nonsense attitude, and she was the only person I trusted with the truth. I called her one afternoon, my voice trembling. "Clara," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need your help." "Chloe, honey, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice instantly full of concern. "You sound like you've been crying." I told her everything, the smell of pine and mint, the photograph in his wallet, the lottery ticket. I didn't hold anything back. There was no shame in this. This was my life, and I was losing it. Clara listened patiently, silently, and when I was done, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "That son of a bitch," she said, her voice low and filled with rage. "I'll kill him myself." "Don't," I said quickly. "I have a better idea." I told her my plan. I wanted to claim the lottery winnings myself before Liam ever got the chance. This was a long shot. I needed to prove that the ticket was mine. I needed access to it. I needed to know all the rules and loopholes of the State Lottery Commission. Clara, being a professional, walked me through the legalities. We would need a copy of the ticket, which I already had. We would need to prove that I had a legitimate claim to it. We would need to move quickly, before Liam could. "It's risky, Chloe," she said. "He could claim you stole it. It could get messy." "It's already messy, Clara," I replied, "and I'm going to end it on my terms." Over the next few days, the plan became my new reality. I continued to act like the perfect wife, cooking his favorite meals and asking him about his day. But now, every time he left for work, I went to our bedroom and looked at his wallet, at the tiny piece of paper that was my ticket to a new life, a life away from him and his deceit. I kept my phone in a separate room and would check it for messages from Clara, a constant stream of information about the Lottery Commission, legal advice, and words of support that kept me from breaking down entirely. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unlikely source. Liam's friend Mike, the one who was a boating enthusiast, stopped by one afternoon, his face a mixture of concern and awkwardness. "Hey, Chloe," he said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Is Liam around?" "He's working late," I said, offering him a beer. "What's up?" Mike hesitated, then took a long sip of his beer. "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but Liam told me he won the lottery." My heart pounded, but I kept my composure. "He told you?" "He told me not to tell anyone." "Yeah, well, he told me that he was planning to tell you soon, but that he wanted me to do him a favor first. He asked me to keep the ticket for him for a few days, just so he could sort things out before giving it to you." The lie was so perfect, so elegant, that it almost took my breath away. He was not planning on sharing the winnings with me. He was going to claim he lost the ticket and then buy a new life for himself and his mistress. "That's considerate of him," I said, feeling a cold rage wash over me. Mike nodded. "He's a good guy, Chloe, just trying to be careful." I just smiled, a small, knowing smile. "I know he is," I said. "He's a very good guy. You know, I'm planning on going to Italy as well. Do you know where he was planning to go?" "Just curious." Mike hesitated, then told me. "He said that he was going to take a trip to Italy with a woman he's seeing over there." He looked at me, his eyes full of pity. "You know, that new woman he's seeing is a little weird, but she has a great personality. He said he was going to marry her and that he was going to buy a new car for her." Mike was lying. I could tell by the way he was shifting his weight, the way he was avoiding my gaze. He was covering for Liam, but he was also trying to warn me. He was a good friend, but he was also a man who was afraid of a lie. The whole conversation was an intricate dance of half-truths and unspoken words, a microcosm of my entire marriage. I just smiled, a cold, empty smile. "That's good to know, Mike. Thank you." I closed the door after he left and leaned against it, breathing heavily. The full scope of his betrayal had finally been revealed. He was planning to take the money, leave me with nothing but the truth, and start a new life with the woman I now knew had been a part of this lie from the very beginning. My revenge would be a cold, calculating dish served with a smile. I now knew his every move, every lie he had told, and I was going to use it all against him. The final act was now in my hands, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. The plan was a living, breathing thing now, and I was committed to seeing it through to the bitter end. The first step was a subtle one, a psychological play that was a hallmark of my design work. I needed to convince Liam that everything was perfectly normal, that the tension he felt was all in his head, a product of his own guilt. So I started to act like the Chloe he knew and loved, warm, affectionate, and utterly oblivious. I cooked his favorite meals, watched movies with him on the couch, and laughed at his jokes with a sincerity that surprised even me. He seemed to relax, and the guarded look in his eyes began to soften. On Wednesday, the day he was planning on cashing the ticket, he came home early, his face flushed with a nervous excitement I recognized all too well. "Babe," he said, kicking off his boots, "I have some good news." "What is it?" I asked, leaning against the kitchen counter, a smile on my face that felt like a mask. "I cashed the ticket," he said, and I saw a flicker of triumph in his eyes. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a small piece of paper, a receipt from the lottery commission. $100,000. My heart pounded, but I kept my composure. "My God, Liam, that's amazing! I knew it! I just knew it!" I ran over and hugged him, and he hugged me back, his embrace feeling strangely hollow. "So when are we going to Italy? And what kind of car are you going to get me?" I asked playfully. He pulled away from me and held me at arm's length, his smile now a little too wide, a little too strained. "About that, Chloe, I need to talk to you about something." And then he said it all. He told me about David, the woman in the photograph, the one he had met at the local bakery. He told me he was in love with her. He told me that the lottery winnings had given him the opportunity to start a new life, a life with her. The words, so cold and cruel, were a physical blow. But I didn't flinch. I just stood there, the smile still plastered on my face, watching him lie. "I'm sorry, Chloe," he said, his voice now a low, pained whisper. "I never meant to hurt you, but I can't go on living a lie. I need to be with her." I nodded, pretending to absorb the words. "I understand," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "But what about the money? You said we'd plan it all together." "About that," he said, a look of genuine regret now on his face. "I'm afraid there's not going to be any money, not for us. I'm giving it all to David. She has a sick mother, and she needs the money to pay for her medical bills." I nodded again, my mind already a whirlwind of plans and counterplans. The lie was so audacious, so cruel, that it almost made me laugh. He wasn't just leaving me, he was taking everything we had built, and giving it all to his mistress. But I had a secret of my own. A secret that he wasn't aware of. "It's okay, Liam," I said, and for the first time, my smile was real. A cold, vengeful smile that made him take a step back. "I understand. You're a good man, Liam. A very good man." "But you're a fool. What do you mean?" he asked, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Nothing," I said, the smile now a full, open grin. "Just that I have a confession of my own to make. The lottery ticket you cashed? The one for $100,000? The one you were going to give to your mistress? I already cashed it." His face went white. He stared at me, uncomprehending. "What? What are you talking about?" "I know all about you and David," I said, my voice now as cold as a winter wind. "I saw the photograph. I smelled the cologne. And I took the lottery ticket from your wallet last week. I cashed it this morning, before you ever got the chance. The money is in a new bank account, an account that you're not on. All 100,000 of it." He stared at me, his jaw slack. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. His world was crumbling around him, not because of a confession, but because of a lottery ticket that was now worthless. A lie he could no longer tell. And I, for my part, felt a strange sense of relief, of calm. The storm had finally broken, and I had weathered it, and was standing on my own 2 feet. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the distant hum of the refrigerator. Liam just stood there, staring at me, the receipt for the now worthless lottery ticket fluttering in his hand. His face, once so full of confident triumph, was now a portrait of shock, confusion, and dawning horror. "You're lying," he finally managed to say, his voice a hoarse whisper. "You're just trying to mess with me." I shook my head, the cold grin never leaving my face. "Am I? Check the account. Check the savings account you and I shared. Look at the balance." "Oh, wait, you can't." He stumbled backward, grabbing his laptop from the kitchen table. His fingers, clumsy and shaking, fumbled for the password. He opened the bank app and his eyes, wide with disbelief, stared at the screen. The balance was an empty zero. Our joint savings account, a testament to years of shared goals and sacrifices, was gone. "What have you done, Chloe?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Where's the money? Our money?" "The money is safe," I said, leaning against the counter. "I transferred it to a new account, a new life. A life you're not a part of. And the lottery winnings, well, those are mine now, all 100,000 of it." He sank into a chair, his face a mask of utter despair. "I don't understand," he said, shaking his head. "I don't understand how you knew." I just smiled, a cruel, knowing smile. I wanted to tell him everything, about the scent of pine and mint, about the photograph in his wallet, about the lies he told. But I didn't. He didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve a monologue, a dramatic reveal. He just deserved the cold, hard truth. "You broke my heart, Liam," I said, my voice low and venomous. "You broke our marriage, our life. You broke everything that was sacred to us. And for what? For some cheap affair with a woman you met at a bakery?" "I'm sorry, Chloe," he said, his voice now a desperate plea. "I know I messed up, but I love you. You have to believe me." I shook my head, the smile now gone. "You don't know what love is, Liam. Love is not a lie. Love is not a secret. Love is not a lottery ticket you plan to use to buy a new life with someone else. You're a liar, Liam. And you're a thief. You stole from me, you stole from us, and now you have nothing. Not the money, not the woman, not a life with us." He looked at me, a silent, devastated man in his own home. He looked at the kitchen, at the refrigerator, at the counter, at everything that was now a monument to a life he had lost. "What about the kids?" he finally asked. "What are we going to tell them?" I just shook my head. "There are no kids, Liam. There never were." "I'm sorry, Liam," I said, my voice now a whisper. I just don't love you anymore." He stared at me, his face pale. And then he stood up and walked away, a shattered man in his own home. He walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, and out of my life forever. I never saw him again. He was gone, a phantom of the past. The next day, my sister Clara and I flew to Italy. I didn't get a new car. I just cashed the winnings, and now I'm living in an apartment in Venice, a beautiful, old apartment with a balcony overlooking a canal. The money I took from our joint account, the money I earned from the lottery, all of it, is now in a new bank account, a new life, and I, for my part, am finally free.